wamkelekile kwakhona kwiSAMAL TV. Namhlanje ndisho ndathi ke nguKCI&MO kwikona yabo. Sawufaka into namhlanje kuhanjwa kanjani namanje samkela ke isihlobo sam. Otherwise empela kwexesha elide kangaka kwenzeka ntoni namhlanje since last time.
I was just with you 3 days ago. What the hell are you doing? You want to lie to viewers? I've always wanted to do this. This is not Yizo. Wow. Well, I'm sure by now you're wondering why is this guy doing all these things. Guys, Tobela, my friend.
I know.
We all know that parliamentarians don't work at all. They don't work. But there's one production that has really made them work. I remember back when I was still at school, Yizo.
Yeah.
It was a topic even in parliament. First time I see South African parliamentarians talking about education and getting things serious. And I took interest and I wanted to know the acting and everything else I saw and everything else. I wanted to see and know people behind the scene. You know, these people stole my idea, but I don't remember giving them to anyone. But this is...
The story as lab where you'll find out about into it's like now, or I was part of a story the time that's the way and I just understand but I don't think kulula ukwenza lonto leyo today. You understand ukuthi we're from different places, but the story esasengweyizo isasihlanganisa sonke. When I wabona yourself kwi story and then I saw myself kwi story. Can you imagine lonto le? Does it even ikhona njalo evele yenzeke and then ke uzoziqalela into yobana yinto? Does it make sense?
It does sometimes.
Okay.
Well, guys, you might be wondering, why are these two on about? Today we have a very great pioneer, guys. When we say pioneer, we're talking about people who start things and others follows, and they still perfect their craft. It's an honor for me that today we're sitting side by side with a great legend. You cannot, in South Africa, speak South African film and TV without mentioning this man. Every time when we gossip about him, I say, he's trapped in the wrong body, guys, in color. He's a black man, this one. Everything that I know of him. Well, there was this other one called 21 Up. I haven't really researched much about it. But everything I know about him is black. Ladies and gentlemen, this is KCI&MO's Corner, and we bring to you the legendary Angus Gibson. Angus, welcome, sir.
I'm very happy to be here.
We'd let you here.
I'm enjoying my single malt.
Well, okay. You're going to need a whole lot of those. The reason why, actually, Angus, so before I do that, this is not Yizo. We're talking you. This is not Isibaya. Okay. We're talking you.
Okay.
Reason why, actually, I wanted to ask that you tell us what you drink so that we can get you drunk. We just wanted you to get drunk a bit so that you can tell us how much of black talent you have exploited since.
A lot.
We're talking about black talent, guy. When you'll find out not even he just knows ngapha. When he puts you on television, you become. Those are the things okay, are you telling me it's like it's not television. It's like it's not scripted. You understand? So I'm trying to think, when you write, sometimes do you write with the person in mind, or it just happens? You know what? Audition, direction.
So for me, casting is like an incredibly important thing. So I will see hundreds and hundreds of people. And I suppose when I do casting, I always try and find out about the person. So I always try and find out what their life has been. Because I kind of feel like I need to understand the person and understand how they will relate to the role and where it will overlap. And it doesn't have to overlap, because some actors can do things that are different to who they are. But others, it's best to take them down the road of the place that their own experience. I think casting is pretty much, it's not like I bring brilliant performances out of characters, I sort of try and put them into a space in which a platform in which they can perform. And on the whole, yeah, I've been excited by what I see and with the actors that I've put on the screen. I also think that, you can write a role and then if you don't have an actor in mind and then you can't find the actor for the role, then it's a real problem. And then that character kind of dies. So I quite often do have an idea of who I would like to cast. But then equally often it's finding new people. And I like to put new people together with people that have real experience. So the new people bring a kind of an edge, and the experienced people bring stability, so.
Oh. Anyway, intshelo dathi ke mhlambe uyangena sixokola ke no Angus Gibson enditshelo ke dathi ke uyi-film director ngamanye amaxesha ke njengoba uMo besetshilo wathi xa uthetha ngefilimu kwakunye netelevision eSouth Africa akhona amagama ongasoze ungawabizi mhlambi ke lelinye lamagama yilokathi mhlambi into ezifana ezibese sinqokole ngazo sathi eminye yemisebenzi yakhe besides mhlambi yizo because yabona into bona si connectwe nguye ayiphelelanga apha.
No, very, very true. Angus has done a lot of great things, man. But it's those things that I want to avoid talking about it. I want him to do that for us. But first and foremost, why were you so stubborn, knowing for sure that Thembisiete can act then, but you insisted and continued with her? She's such a marvel right now.
She's doing brilliantly, huh?
Way beyond that.
Yeah. So there you go. We were right?
No, you were wrong. You were wrong because she couldn't. We asked ourselves, why? Why are they insisting on this person? But we can see the results now. But unfortunately, TV
it was a long-term investment.
I would believe so. Because every time when I see Thembi on TV, remembering the days, unfortunately, South Africans are very brutal and cruel in criticism. Sometimes we take it to a level where it breaks people. But Thembi couldn't break and you couldn't. You insisted on her. And I remember when I think you did Zone 14 as well.
Yeah. She was on Yizo, she was on Zone 14. Now she's on Gomorrah. Yeah.
Did you see what is happening right now, or was it just a case of, I'm a director, I'll just do what I want? Screw people.
No, I suppose there was a spirit to Thembi that not just me, but all of us really in BOM really celebrated. And so we wanted her to be part of us. And so that was important for us. And our experience of her was a really good one, and remains a good one. So, yeah.
Okay. Njengoba ke mhlambi ke mawuse uchila wathi mhlambi ezinye izinto esizibonayo, let me go back to Angus. As we look at television today, do you still get excited as like when you started, when you look at what we are doing today with everything that has happened, there's technology, there's so many things that are new, does it still give you that kick and say, you know what, tomorrow I want to do this? Or it's like somewhere, somehow, I am not getting it, or I am getting it?
The other day somebody asked me, well, Hugh, what of the things that you've done, what do you like best? And I said, well, I like Yuzu 1 best. But I would not like to think that that's going to be my best work. I'm assuming that my best work is still ahead.
How? Naru, you're retiring. No, it's not.
No, I'm not retiring.
Wow, okay.
So at the moment, I'm casting on Shaka, and I've been working on it for 4 years. So I'm hoping that project will be will not disappoint the nation, because I know people have high expectations of it. So I'm really excited about it. I think I have a really great team around me. And I suppose that's, with Yizo, it really had a lot to do with different energies coming together at that time. It was like those actors were hungry, and it kind of gave them a place to play. And the cinematographer I was working with was somebody that I have a long relationship with, and he's a really brilliant cinematographer. And he had been working on documentary, and the shift into drama was exciting for him. So that was great. Teboho and I really clicked. And at the time, I remember our AD thought Teboho and I were insane. I mean, he really, I think people used to report back, there was a taxi that shuttled from Soweto. And on the taxi, he used to be saying, "Hey, these guys don't know what they're doing." Because he kind of was, I think there was a way of doing things with SABC 2 and 3, and we were kind of breaking all the rules. So I think they thought, this is going to be rubbish. And we've remained friends, that AD and I. We still work together. And I must actually ask him if he thought it was rubbish or not. But while we were making it, he thought it was rubbish.
No, we don't want to lie to you. That changed the landscape, the face of SATV. If there's one thing that I know that you did, you showed parents what they didn't know.
Well, we spent a year researching it. And so that was the thing, that was the SABC gave us the space gave us the space to do that research. So it was kind of luxury. And we were shooting 8 minutes a day. I mean, now on Isibaya and on Zwide now, we're shooting at least 20 minutes a day. Things got tougher in a way. We were spoiled back then. But hopefully on Shaka, we will be spoiled again.
So you're the ones who are doing House of Sweden?
We're doing House of Sweden.
Oh, no wonder they said it was brilliant. Somebody else said I must watch it. Now you know I'm going to go watch it.
Casey, have you watched it?
Not
yet.
It's so new. It's so new, by the way. But I know everybody's talking about it.
No wonder there's Jeff in it. Jeff Sikin.
Oh, I love Jeff.
I love Jeff.
Yeah.
That's my homeboy. I love Jeff. You spoke of SABC that they gave you leverage and space to do whatever you wanted to do. And things are tough right now. And we're glad things are tough right now because you guys took all the monies. Every time we went and pieced there, they always tell you that it's with bomb, or if not with bomb. What are those guys in Randburg? What are they called? Eben Brew. When Endemol was still around, everything else went to bomb Endemol and them.
That's not true.
We are very happy that things are very tough for you now, Angus. But I love you. I've got love for you. Isibaya.
Yes.
Apparently, you pitched it to the SABC some while back.
So we were doing Zone 14 with SABC. Okay, so what it was, when we pitched Zone 14, I said I wanted to do a taxi industry thing. And they said, no, we're doing another project, which is the taxi industry. So you can't do the taxi industry. So we changed it to a funeral parlor. So the Malloys had a funeral parlor, which was very nice. I liked the funeral parlor, and then I don't know what went on with the SABC and Zone, because I loved Zone, and they kept on delaying it, and then they said that, you know, they weren't sure they were going to renew the contract. And I said to them, well, why don't we do a taxi arc? And nobody was interested in that. And then they pulled Zone, they ended it. And so I went and pitched the taxi idea to Mzansi, and they went with it. So that was Isibaya, but it wasn't simply a taxi idea. In the 80s, I did a series of documentaries on Soweto, and I had been interviewing hostel dwellers, and it was and in the 90s, the beginning of the 90s, it got very rough in the hostels. And so I went back to their homes to do interviews there, and I went to Msinga and Makabaleni and those parts of the Tugela Valley, and I stayed in a household which belonged to Sipho Mkunu, and he had 5 wives and more than 40 children. Or he has, should I say? No, not had. And so I sort of had a view into this world that was very interesting and complex. And he was a man that had, so his wives, he had 3 wives in the valley that were very traditional Zulu women. And then he had a wife who was a teacher up in Kranskop. And then he had a French wife. And in fact, when the French wife came to visit, they built a toilet for her, which was called the Mlungu's toilet. It was like, and anyway, so that was at the end of the 80s. And since then, I've been going back there almost every year, and my sons now expect that we'll go back and visit every year, and we stay in the household there. So the idea of exploring a polygamous world and a very traditional Zulu world came out of those experiences of staying at Sipho's place.
Oh, well, guys, we all now know that we think the single malt. I don't know. Wait, where's the Angus whiskey, guys? We need more of that. Please give us more. Give us more of that, because secrets are coming out. We now know that we don't have to invite Angus in your homestead, guys, because once he leaves, he comes out with brilliant ideas that is going to show to the world. Let's meet after the break.
Yeah, it's called exploitation.
SAMAL TV SA. SAMAL TV SA.
Welcome back home kelekile ku SAMAL TV intokathi ka KCI&MO namhlanje ngithi ke sixoxa lapha kunye nabani kunye no Angus Gibson khombula basitheke xa uthetha nge-TV kwakunye nefilm yalapha eMzantsi Afrika ngalenye igama ongasoze ulibale. Coming to you, Angus, sometimes do people get confused when they are told that you are the director because of what you're directing? It's like when you come, it's like it's a different vibe. Are you sure is this the person? Don't people get confused sometimes? Well, it's like you've lived that life.
I don't know. I think my reputation precedes me. I assume you're suggesting that as a white person, I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. which is the largely is the world view at the moment. So I'm kind of very aware of that. People should tell their own stories. And for some reason, I find myself largely telling stories in the Black world. But I suppose I do live in a country that is, it's a majority. The audience that I speak to is a Black audience. So for some reason, those are the stories that I've wanted to and landed up telling. I'm sure somewhere in the future there's a white story, but haven't got there yet.
But it's the way you are telling those stories. It's more like, if you call this a gift, when did you notice that you have this gift? Because it feels like a gift.
So I suppose I don't tell stories by myself. I work with people. And I kind of feel like, film production or television production is about chemistry. It's about putting a team together, and it is about giving them the space to do good work, right? So I think a lot of what you see that you're giving me the credit for, you should give credits to a whole lot of people around me. You know what I mean? Because it's a team. I think I'm a good listener. I tend to listen more than I talk. So this is uncharacteristic for me when I'm doing the talk. And maybe that's a factor.
Angus, I'm sure, I always pride myself with this thing that even Google does not know who Hussein Mane is. Do you know who that is?
No.
Okay. Google does not know your age, where were you born? Nobody. I have a feeling that probably have been interviewed by hundreds of people. But
I have not.
But nobody really knows the genesis of Angus. You as a young boy, the love of this thing that you're doing.
So I grew up I was the last born in, my family was quite a wealthy family that had lost its money just before I arrived. But I mean, still, I had a very comfortable white South African upbringing. And I had every intention of leaving the country. I sort of, for some reason, growing up in South Africa, I kind of didn't like the way it felt. I didn't like the way people dressed. I didn't like anything. I didn't like the music I heard on the radio. I didn't like the voices on the radio. And I sort of had a sense that as soon as I could, I would shift my life to another part of the world. And I mean, through strange circumstance, I sort of grew up in first in a suburb called Durban North, in Durban, which is very kind of middle of the road, middle class, white. And then I moved on to a farm. But also, my life was a very secure, closed, privileged one. But in Johannesburg, I found a way to get a sense of what South Africa, beyond the closed space that I'd been in, was. And in fact, my intention had been to do a university degree, go and do some kind of more studying overseas and then stay overseas. And I fell in love with film in my first year of university, and I was doing economics. And I was not in love with economics. And I dropped out in my third year. And I was grabbed by the army, being a white South African at the time. And I was sent off to Kimberley and then Bloemfontein. And because I had all these university credits, they said to me, we're looking for teachers to teach. Because they were trying to make the army look better in places out there. And so I said, okay, I have maths and English credits. And so they sent me to this place called Batlaros, which was on the sort of the edge of the Kalahari, and the nearest town was a place called Kuruma. But Batlaros at the time was the space of largely mud huts, actually. Very beautiful Tswana, kind of very traditional mud huts. And there was the chief's house, and there was a trading store, and there was the school where I taught, and there was a hospital. And I had a room at the hospital, and I taught them. So I found myself living basically in I was a white person in a black community. And in a way, strangely, I then sort of got a sense of a world beyond the bubble that I had grown up in. And I thought, okay, this is a world that I can connect with somehow. And actually, I do want to stay in South Africa. So I have that to thank for kind of the fact that I have remained a South African. Yeah, so that was a formative experience for me, and maybe led me down the road that I've taken.
Wow. Well, guys, you heard it from him. I picked up two things, a whole lot of things. First, he hates John Robbie. Secondly, he's a cool racist. He went to the army. You heard that, right?
Yeah.
But then, as mhlawumbe sesithethile mhlawumbe sathetha ngoyizo sathetha ngesibaya, last year I believe ukuthi lebe nditsho ukuthi back of the morning, a fascination with that is that when you're writing a story, you have to recreate the whole, like, you were not there, you understand? But then when we see it, it's like you were part of it, creating a story like that, going back 1958. Was it easy? Remember, there's a language, and then there's fashion of that time. Do you have to go back and write all that, or creation behind?
So, in the 1980s, I was part of the workshop that made the Sophiatown play. So I was one of the writers of the Sophiatown play. I wasn't the main writer, but I was one of the writers. And at the time, I just started doing research. And then I made a documentary for British television about the removals from Sophiatown. And I did interviews with people that were removed, with singers. I traveled all over the world. I went to Lusaka to interview ANC people, and I went to London and I interviewed the Manhattan Brothers, and then back here there were a lot of the old gangsters still alive. There was Court Boy from the Americans, and there was Don Matera, who was this kind of intellectual and a poet, and he had been a gangster, you know. So I was always interested in him as a character, that sort of duality of being a poet and a gangster. And I sort of, I kind of obsessed about it, and I knew a great deal about Sophiatown. But that was in the 80s. And then many, many years later, we were asked to do a youth program, and I said, well, why don't we do a youth program set in Sophiatown? Because those journalists and everybody were like really young people. They were like barely out of their teens when they were doing really great work. So we did this show called The Road, which was disastrous. It was like, it like did not find an audience at all. And
can I chip in?
Yeah.
It was not disastrous. That was a beautiful concept. It just that it was ahead of its time.
Okay, but for Mzansi, they thought it was disastrous because they were not getting the ARs that they wanted. And so they canned it after, I don't know, 120 episodes or something. And so we had all these costumes and we had all these sets and everything. And we said, well, before we destroy all of this, let's do something quickly. And that was Back to the Moon.
Oh. And I must say, Richard, oh, what a brilliant thespian. I'm saying this because he grew up just under me. You know, he lived in the same block with me.
Oh.
And he would always bother me when he was still at after, you know, because I was still at SABC. And seeing him blossoming like that, and the person that he still is today, the fame and everything doesn't go to his head. He's still as humble as him.
Yeah, Richard is a huge talent. So he played a Congolese guy on The Road, and myself and Teboho directed those scenes, and we had such fun with Richard that I thought, I've got to do something with Richard. And Munewa was also on The Road. So it was kind of just pulling together people that we had fun working with and doing, and that's what ended up as Back of the Moon. But very few people saw it. I mean, in this country, I think. I mean, I don't know. It's like, it seems to have sort of fallen into a hole as well.
And then,
but I liked it.
When you're talking Manawa, when she is singing Davilis, is it because I thought Miriam Makeba immediately, not to go to Mhlambe, but Manawa, it was Eve, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Was she supposed to be a singer, or because of automatically when she was singing that song, I was like, maybe she's supposed to be Miriam Makeba? Because
so of course, the character's based on Miriam Makeba because, you know, Miriam kind of was in King Kong, and then she left with Hugh and everybody with King Kong, and they founded life in exile overseas. So it's kind of a fiction about the night before a Miriam Makeba-like figure goes overseas. And in that last night in South Africa, in 4 hours or whatever, she has a little love affair with the character that Richard played. So it's a love story that plays out in 4 hours. Yeah.
By the way, Richard is Congolese. He didn't play a Congolese character. He's Congolese. He just grew up baby. Can I dare you right here in front of everybody else? There's a guy, you see that guy with that camera, that one that's facing us right now. I've been knocking at him, and I think probably he's rusty, and the industry has really messed him up to a point that he does not believe in things that he comes up with. Can I dare you that we would love to bring a script to you? His script is this called Footprint. Beautiful story. He's laughing at the phone. Beautiful story. Can you just, when you get time, and we send it to you, you look at it?
I would love to read it.
All right, thank you, sir.
And I'll tell you what I think.
How about Empet? I want my shares. But Angus, I think in everything else that you've done, I'm going to say this out of respect of everybody else, not because they're not there when you were here. You had never projected arrogance with your greatest achievements. And when we look at most production companies, we feel them. And it's not like I said, we don't know that they sit with people in restaurants and discuss this thing that they'll be at. But what still brings you to a point of humility where you feel like I've done a whole lot of things for South African TV, but I'm still this person? As you say, most of the people might not even see Back of the Moon. But it's done by a great like you. The humility, where does it really come?
Gosh, I mean, I'm not sure that I am humble, but I I mean, I'm interested in people. So, I mean, every person I'm interested in. And I suppose I believe that we are always learning. Well, I think that if you're not learning, you're dying, you know. So, I kind of feel like I can learn something from pretty much everybody. So I do engage, and I mean, if people send me a script or whatever, I really make an effort to engage and see whether I think there's something there. And often I'm rewarded by that, because often, you know, sometimes there is something there. You know, the head writer on House of Zwide, you know, something of his writing landed on my table. I read it. I thought, I want to meet this person. And I phoned him up and I said, can we have coffee? Like, I'm not busy tomorrow, but the day after. He said, sure. But what I didn't know was that he was there for coffee the day after, but he had traveled from Harare. He was Zimbabwean. No, he is Zimbabwean. And he's a huge talent. And I only came across that because I actually opened and read that script. So I feel I gain from having an openness. And I think that when people do things for the first time as well, when they're given an opportunity, there's a kind of an energy and an electricity that comes from that, which I think had a lot to do with Izo. There were many people there doing things for the first time. And in a way, Teboho and I were doing something for the first time. We had never written television drama. There was not one person on Izo that had ever written television drama before. So we were all doing it for the first time. So, and I suppose, you know, I have two things. I mean, you know, I feel like if you fear failure, then that's a huge problem, because if you fear to fail, then you'll stick in a safe place. So I believe that risk taking is a very important thing. And I'm sort of very consciously, as we sort of go into doing the Shaka project, thinking I'd much rather make a grand failure than do a safe kind of boring Shaka kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, the other thing I haven't mentioned is that I spent, you know, the 80s mainly I was doing documentary work, which is about sort of exploring the real world and real people. And so the drama that I like and the drama that I tend to do has to do with a reflection of a real world and real people. So,
it's a true reflection. Anyway, earlier on you mentioned Shaka Zulu, but right now we're going to the break, and then when we come back, we'll continue from there, because I still want to find out, is it the same Shaka Zulu, the same script, or the same Shaka Zulu that we know? Okay, this one is the new one. So after the break, we will talk Shaka Zulu, see which one lo wenziwayo, is it the lowa uya continuisha okanye ngomtsha lona. You're watching SAMAL TV, njondathi KC kwakunye no Mo kwikona yabo, KC&MO's corner. We'll be right back.
SAMAL TV SA. SAMAL TV SA.
Boom, 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 boom. Whoa, before the break, Casey spoke about Shaka Zulu. Is it the old one? Is it a remake? It is what? Welcome to SAMAL TV SA. This is KC&MO's corner. Angus, Shaka Zulu. You say you hope and you pray that you you're going to give audience the authentic story about Shaka Zulu.
I didn't say that.
Well, I'm paraphrasing. All right, onward.
I hope I didn't disappoint the audience.
All right.
Yeah.
Semantics. But yeah, I don't think, this is me now, controversial as I might sound, I apologize in advance because I'm about to offend. I think people are afraid to tell the real Shaka story. And some catch feelings. I guess it has to do with pride and ethnic pride. There's a place somewhere by Babanango called Iliwa Lega Shaka. Have you been there? You see? And I believe in the research that you might have made. And this is no discredit to anything. Shaka took cowards and threw them in there. Hence it's called Iwa Lega Shaka. It's a... What is Liwa in English, guys? English has escaped me. It's at night now. It's a cave. I think it's a cave. I believe a Shaka story without that story, it's not a complete story. But it's fine. This is me trying to sound all filmmaking and stuff. Mishak Mavus and the talent, the pool of talent that you started with Yizo. He's also doing a stage play about Shaka. And I'm glad he's doing that because you are producing what I believe is going to be a greatest Shaka storytelling or narrative.
Yeah.
Looking at you and looking at him at the same time, the synergy and everything else, you sort of founded him because he was just from Township Theatre. I see that as growth. But is the industry sustainable to the pool of talent that we have in South Africa right now with the advent of YouTubes and everything else? I know you've produced a whole lot of talent, but do you think this industry right now is really sustainable?
Well, I mean, it's a growing industry. I mean, because people are watching more and more television. So, I mean, in the context of COVID, for example, I felt very privileged that I was able to continue working. That's because it's an industry that people are thirsty for. So, I mean, in that sense, it feels great, you know. There were many questions inside that question of yours. Mishak, I think it's fantastic that he's done the Shaka play, and I was going to go and see it last night, but then I ended up working very late, and so I'm definitely going to see it next week. And in fact, the first time that I ever saw Mduduzi Mabaso, who's involved in that play, he was playing Shaka on the stage. So there's kind of a connection between those Alex guys and me and Shaka somehow. And in terms of technology, I mean, I kind of feel like technology is second to talent. Like if you can tell a great story and it's rough as hell, I don't mind, you know. I'm interested to hear new voices, and I suppose I'm interested in authentic voices, which might be particular to me. But you know, recently I've connected with a guy who grew up in Kliptown, and he's writing stuff that is about Kliptown and the community that he lives in, and I think it's incredible. But I can't think of a platform that will actually provide a space for him, because it's very raw and it's very rough, and everything is feeling very kind of safe at the moment. Like Netflix only wants to do popcorn, they say in Africa, and so this is not popcorn. And Mnet are timid, and the SABC are scared, and so I kind of think, where is he going to find a platform.
We are not scared.
Okay, well, there you go. Maybe you're going to provide the platform for people like him. And I, you know, so for me, authentic storytelling and fresh ideas are much more important than the technology. And the great thing is now that the truth is you can make a great film on your cell phone. So I'm a believer in all of that. Yeah.
Okay, notes Shaka Zulu. I know Shaka Zulu. Maybe you know Shaka Zulu. We all know Shaka Zulu. So the one that you guys are working on right now, is it the new one or is it a continuation of the one that we know? Or it's the same story but different people on a different cast?
So, I mean, the Shaka Zulu that was made by Bill Fora and the SABC in the 80s, I mean, it was very, very impressive in many ways, and it had incredible production values, and but ours is a very different proposition to that. And I suppose, you know, first of all, if you think about that story, it started with the British,
yeah,
and it was sort of their lens into Shaka, who was kind of this exotic king. You know, so, and in fact, the British literally entered his life in the last 3 or 4 years of his life. He died literally a few years after they arrived in his life. So we are telling it in 3 series, starting in fact, before his birth. We start with the relationship between Nandi and Senzo KHONA. And then the first season ends when he becomes the king. And the second season is the battle between the Zulu and the Ndwandwe, really, which is Zwide being his major, and Ntombazi being his major sort of foes. And the third season is him at the height of his power, and then things turning, you know, people turning against him. So, in a way, if you were to try and describe the form of our telling of the first season, it's not unlike Game of Thrones, in the sense that it's about a number of kingdoms sort of jostling with each other. So, and in fact, the Zulu are like a sort of minor kingdom on the edge of the Mtetwa, and then the Ndwandwe, who was a very big, powerful force. And they were all kind of fighting for the trade with Mozambique, with Delagoa Bay at the time. So Shaka is this kid that grows up through, you know, in the midst of all that is going on. So ours is a very broad landscape. And in fact, the main adult characters of our show in the first season are Nandi and Godongwana, who, you know, Dingaswayo, and Zwide of the Ndwandwe. I mean, they are very substantial characters in our series. And you watch Shaka growing up and growing and sort of being mentored by Dingaswayo as a young warrior, and then Dingaswayo in a way facilitating and helping him take the Zulu, becoming the king of the Zulus. So it's a very different telling, and there's not a, and we, so one of the main narratives that we do tell is, you know, Dingaswayo, his father attempted to kill him, and he went into exile. And it's very mysterious as to where he went. There are many different accounts about what he did in exile. we know that he spent a good deal of time with the Hlubi up in the mountains. So we do that, and then we have him travel down to Mozambique, where he lays eyes on the slave trade that is happening out of the port, and he settles in with the Mabudu, who were a very powerful kingdom down in the area. I mean, much more powerful, in fact, than the Portuguese themselves. So I think the story we're telling is a story that most South Africans know very little about. And we spent more than 4 years at this stage researching. And you know, people feel very strongly about Shaka, and there are many contradictory stories that completely contradict each other. But we've kind of tried to gather all of those stories and to try and make sense of the contradictions and try and make choices. And then there are big holes in the history where there's no, you don't know what happened. And in those spaces, we've filled it up with our own story.
That Shaka story, the one that I know, was a huge production, and there was so many people involved in terms of the cast. So I'm trying to think, in my head, I'm thinking, is it going to be something like that, as huge as that, or it's going to be a different vibe, or watch, or can you wait and see? For me.
Well, I mean, my view of that series was its strength was in its spectacle before its storytelling, or in its character, for that matter. I mean, I didn't feel like Mkabai or most of the characters were really developed in a complex way. So I'd like to think that ours is much more character-based telling, with complex characters. And, we've done an enormous amount of research to try and give you a real sense of the society of the period, and that had its rules and had its order and was kind of a dignified society. And so it's a very different proposition. But I would like to think that it will be as exciting as that one, or more exciting, I would like to think. It is full of the things of great drama. And we are certainly trying for scale. We have CGI on our side, which they didn't have in those days. So we have computers to work with, which they didn't have then. We're very excited to be doing it, I must say. And again, it is a broad and a very incredible team of people that have come together. And it's team. So, for example, the person that we are working very closely with was the speechwriter of the late King. We sort of, and the thing is that, we've been speaking to historians, we've been speaking to the families, and they all have different ideas. And we've kind of had to try and navigate a way through these different ideas.
Wow. Talking about the character of Shaka Zulu, even in real life, some people think that the person that Henry Cele, the person who played Shaka, is Shaka. And as much as it is film, but that the character owned Shaka. Henry Cele owned Shaka. I'm not sure if this is making sense.
No, it makes complete sense. Yeah. I mean, I think that if anybody has an image of the guy, they think Henry. They think that deep voice, they think six-pack, they think, there's no doubt about it. And that, of course, is a huge challenge, because that was Henry, and was a particular time and a particular telling of the character. This is a different time, and we will use a different actor. And I suspect that in the beginning, people will say, that's not Henry. And after a while, they will understand that perhaps this is a more interesting take on the character.
Who's your Henry?
I'm not telling.
Well, guys, whatever they do at BOM, and I'm very sure that it's going to be a great production. Now, one thing that I don't want them to miss on is the circumcision part, because it's always a debate about that. He said contradictory and stuff. We want to know how they projected Shaka, because we know what Shaka thought of circumcision. It's no secret, guys. Everybody else know that. On that note, I believe it is time for us to visit our very own surgery, so we can cut off some few minutes. We'll meet after the break.
SAMAL TV SA. SAMAL TV SA.
Welcome back to SAMAL TV SA. Tell that again, sisekwivaleni kodwa ke siselapho uhlala noCase kwakunye noMo kule kona yabo. But before siye evenkileni, we were talking about uShaka Zulu nayo yonke nje lanto besiyithetha ngonzama uchecka ko just before siye ku-Angus. Is it hard mhlambi xa ucinga to find uShaka Zulu just because of we know uShaka Zulu? Do you think, I know ukuthi akazosixelela, but do you think it's hard to find umuntu bese simbonile wena xa ucinga before siye kuye?
No, not really for me, because my next Shaka Zulu was one of the great actors. I just forgot his name, worst of all, but he passed on, I think.
Talk about Andile.
Yes.
Yeah.
How everybody else explains Shaka, Andile was the next Shaka for me.
Because of, it's not only mhlambi pressure from the people who are looking for a Shaka. I'm thinking about the person who's going to play Shaka, because you understand, when we all know Henry Cele, who was Shaka on the first film. So I'm thinking, is it not pressure from the person who's going to play?
Yeah, for sure.
Pressure for you, like you need to kill it, really, literally. Is it something like that, or?
It's everything that you say. Yeah, big pressure. Big pressure on the actor, big pressure on us.
Wow.
And we're going to have to persuade the audience that you can look at him in another way.
Wow.
You know, when I was still coming as a novice in this industry, there's a guy, you love casting his wife. His name is Solomon. What's his wife? Mabatu, I think. She played.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes, the husband, Solomon. He said something in this workshop that problem with you filmmakers, young filmmakers, you always want to write dialogue. There's no need for that. A car can drive on the highway for 3 minutes, seeing the actor in the car and seeing highways and high-rise buildings and stuff without saying anything. And then I remember this other day I was at your office while you were still in Kelvin, while you're still becoming this multi-billion company called BOM now. You showed me a 13 minutes film. I can't remember the title proper, but I know it ended with men drowning.
Portrait of a Young Man Drowning. That was not my film, it was Teboho's film.
But it was BOM's.
Yeah.
You know that film, I feel like it carries so much weight and message, especially for young people right now. How do we get to have such films, or that one for that matter, be shown nationally?
Well, it's about the broadcaster. And I do not think we have courageous broadcasters at the moment. I think that everybody's playing it very safe. So it is in alternative platforms like the one that you are building, that there will be space for that kind of thing. So, I mean, my experience of commissioning editors at the moment is that they are nervous to do the wrong thing. And so their sort of instinct is to try and duplicate what is successful rather than to take a chance and explore new territory, right? And so for example, when Isibaya was sort of struck a chord with the audience, it felt like all the channels were saying, well, do something like Isibaya to everybody. And so suddenly there were sort of very traditional, sort of the traditional world was suddenly forefronted. Polygamous marriages were forefronted, and I suppose the violence of Isibaya also felt like it became sort of a regular television thing. And so it becomes less interesting. Isibaya becomes less interesting because everything else is doing the same thing. And those other projects also are less interesting because they're not going into their own territories. And so I'm really always interested in trying to find a space that is unexplored, which is not so easy, but it is something that perhaps on your channel you can do. So it's a challenge to you. Yeah.
You are still watching SAMAL TV SA. By the way, sometimes when people, like the people that you have worked with, it could be from years or to Isibaya, but all those people are still like stars, even right now. Like from years or most of the people that we have seen are still happening today. Like, is it your way maybe of casting? Like when you look at a person, it's not only for this show. It's like even when you move out of this show, you need to be seen. Is it a situation like that maybe when you are working with people, because most of the people that you've worked with on top of the world, even today?
I'd like to think that. I mean, I think there are many people that I've worked with that are struggling now. I suppose I'm more aware of the people that are struggling than the people that have succeeded. And I mean, it's not like, we're looking for, it's not like we make great performances. It's because there is great talent inside those actors, So it's not about us. It's just that we're lucky to have found people that have great genius, and sometimes, we provide a platform, and then other people don't seem to be able to provide the same kind of platform for those actors. So I think there are many great actors that are starved of work. And it's a constant concern for me. But then fortunately, then there are the ones that have just gone on and been extraordinarily successful. So we were just talking about Mduduzi Mabaso in the break, who was a person that I had first seen, in fact, playing Shaka in a stage play. And I was really interested in him, and I had the opportunity to do a film, a sort of a television feature, and I read the character and I thought, that's Mduduzi, and I really had to persuade the production company to cast him in the lead role, and he just did extraordinarily well in it. It was a show set in Alex, and it was it's called Grace or Heartlines. It seemed to have two names. But Mduduzi was incredible in it. And then, he went on to, he still is doing great work. And I'm hoping that I'll work with him again in the future. In fact, straight after that film, I wrote a film for him, which I still haven't made. And he keeps on hucking me about because he says, I'm getting older. But it's a gladiator film and I hope I get to make it one day, and I hope that he can be in it.
Reading my six-pack?
Yeah.
I'm kidding, man. I don't want to do that. Angus, there's a young boy called McG. Sometimes, he puts people in a corner. And sometimes I love his questions. Sometimes I find them very disrespectful. I think I'm going to spoof and steal something from his style.
Right.
The River, the Queen.
Mm.
Which one would you go? Which one would you spend at least a week watching and say, this I can watch and waste my writing time?
The River, the Queen. So I don't watch television. So I really do not watch television. And once upon a time, I sat down and thought, God, I've got to watch The River because I love Gideon and Patu, and I've made a concerted effort to watch 5 episodes of The River, which were great, and I really enjoyed those 5 episodes. I found them very accessible. I liked the performances, but I still haven't done that with Queen, I'm afraid. But so I can't really comment, and it's an indictment of me, not of the shows. Yeah.
No problem. Don't worry, not of the hook yet. King Shaft, Teboho Mahlatsi.
What about them?
Who would you choose? Both are your directors.
I'm not. No, that's a dirty one.
Oh, by the way, before you answer that one, Shaft used to live here.
Huh?
King Shaft used to live here.
Wow. So, in fact, I spoke to him recently, and I sort of really watched that project that he did in KZN that all fell apart. Mm. And I heard such fantastic things about it. And I said to him, please, why don't you just show me the rushes? Mm-hmm. Because Espresso, for example, who's working with us on Shaka, was on that project as well. And there was a really great energy that he generated. I think they're both great talents. So I'm deflecting your question. Teboho, I met in a bar in Nairobi, and he showed me some photographs that he had taken on his cell phone. And I looked at the photographs, and I thought, this guy is a talent. And we ended up bringing him into BOM. And there's no doubt that he's a talent. So there's more than one talent out there. Yeah.
Just before these days, I'm not sure if it is me, but it looks like the stories, I'm not saying they are related to one another. It's more like I can watch this on SABC One, and then when I go to the other channel, more or less there's the same way of writing stories these days. I'm not sure if it's unlike when we were growing up, when we would have so many different kinds of stories on television. But these days, it's like, I'm not sure they're all soapies or they're all, but it's more like they're going the same direction. I'm not sure if they are mellow or they are softer, but there's just something. I'm not sure if it's me or people see that.
It's not you. My answer to you, I know the question is directed probably to the both of us.
Both of you.
Okay. And I think not the answer to the question you're asking right now. When you were speaking of commissioning editors, I was listening with a heavy heart because, and what I'm going to say might not sound okay to the powers that be, but they need to know this. Most commissioning editors are failed filmmakers. So there's no space of they're not ripe to dare. So what Casey does that works, I'd rather let not do that so that I can play safe. So that's why every time you see on SABC 1, SABC 2, SABC 3, ETV, Mzansi and everything else, you feel like all this, even the storylines, they follow each other. It's because those people who are commissioning editors, they are just pure failed filmmakers. That's the answer.
Another thing that I do not understand is that a story like Isibaya, at its peak, and then all of a sudden, Isibaya's, you understand? You don't understand that. It comes back to what you just said, what you are saying now.
Oh, okay. Nah, that one is for him, not for me.
The Isibaya question. So I think that your experience of growing up was of watching 13-part series, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's one thing writing 13 episodes. It's another thing writing a year's worth of daily television. And you have writers that are working across, they'll be working for, maybe they're on both Isibaya and Mberu or whatever. Okay. And so it's kind of a machine. So that, I think, is a factor. Again, I feel like the environments that the broadcasters create, I feel that the commissioning editors live in a fearful space. They think, what if I fail? And their fear of failure drives them towards what has been successful before, I think. So I think that's a factor. So you get a duplication. And there was a third thing that has gone straight out of my head.
While you still think about it, I need you to think about this one as well. Then if you as Bom, that Patu is writing for the river, is writing for Guyani, is writing for what? Why would you as Bom go on, worst of all, with pressure piling on him that he needs to deliver a certain episode to this production company, certain episode to that? Why would you even feel comfortable, you as a production company, hiring that person?
Well, I mean, one, if he's very talented, and the pressure of producing daily television is huge, right? So just keeping up with it and generating new ideas and new story, you're looking for talent. And look, if we're talking specifically about Patu is a major talent. So, for example, Christian Blomkamp, who died very recently, he was a young white male writer. I think you ask anybody, you ask Patu Ngudlian, you ask Chris Q, you ask anybody who the best writer out there was of these daily shows, it was Christian. And he's a great loss to our industry because, you think, oh God, who can write the Friday episode? And everybody would choose Christian to write their Friday episode. And he was this white guy, but he would do his research. He watched what was on television, so he had a sense of what the audience was interested in. And he was a huge talent, and he worked across platforms. And in fact, we had just persuaded him to come back and only work for us. And he got COVID, and he died. Just terrible. It's a great tragedy.
Okay. You watching SAMAL TV SA? Sesifikile ku-10 sibekade sizayisonga. But before sibekade siyavala, normally into esiyenzayo ukuthi emntwini xa ebelondwendwe sithi ngenye imini sasike sandwendwela kulo muntu ubaluleke ngohlamali. You're right, but before you go to your wall of legends, our director wanted
us to ask Angus a question. So I'm going to ask Z-Cam, this beautiful camera, to zoom into our director so he can himself ask the question that he wanted me to ask Angus. Please, sir.
Putting me in a corner, thank you. Shaka Zulu is a very traditional, authentic Zulu story. I'm trying to figure out, you spoke of CGI. Without giving too much details, what are we looking at? What are you going
I mean, so put it this way. Our CGI, we don't have a huge CGI budget relatively. But, so for example, on the 1980s series, they very often would have more than 1,000 extras on the set. We will probably have 200 or 300, and the computer will generate the far background. So that's the difference. So we don't have to have 1,500 people on set, but it will feel the same. Yeah.
On that note, we know that they have budget for 1,500, but just gonna put 200 CGI. You all know that. It's okay, guys. It's okay. Casey, I think it's that time that you guys take your walk.
Okay, kula note leyo kuthiwa ke on this day nganamhlanje sasindwendwelwe ngubani ngo-Angus Gibson. So what we're going to do right now, we're going to ask him sizawuya phaya kula wall ye-legends apho sawufumana khona signature yakhe, just to say I was here on this day.
We were all blessed by great.
We were blessed.
So Angus, we would love your signature. There's anywhere you feel like you want to put it. This is a wall of legends, so that we will all know that at some point in our lives we were graced by the presence of great ones.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Boy, that's a lot of single malt that I've had. I'm sort of walking here with difficulty. Here we go. That's my signature.
It's the date.
What is the date?
21, 7, 28. Page 28.
28.
28. What? October.
I know you're single mode writing now.
2021, right? I'm copying from here. Okay. Oh my goodness.
If you were not going to sign that, you were not going to get this. This is for you, my great sir. For everything else that you have done for the industry. We at SAMAL TV, we feel like you're not honored enough. We know they tried something in 2020, but we feel like
How do you do this?
collage of montages is a great way of saying, in the museum of Angus Gibson one day, the children need to know that lived a great legend who changed the face of South African TV. And not just that, he did great TV.
Thank you so much. I'm very astonished. Who gave me these pictures?
Where's our producer? Where's Mandela? She came with.
Huh? Gee whiz. That's incredible.
Yes, sir. Great things for legends.
Thank you.
You can even read the message there is directly for you, sir. That's exactly for you.
Very kind. Thank you.
So, yeah, on that note, sir, before we let you go, your parting words, your parting shots. I think we've learned so much.
No. I think you know what my parting shot is. I wish you well, and I encourage you to do pioneering work. Don't go the safe route. Do work that is unique and authentic and daring.
Thank you
And hopefully, you know, you will thrive, and I'll come and work for you. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for blessing us. It was a breeze to be with you this.
Is that evening?
Yeah. Okay.
So now I need to wrap up. Angus, you should know that if I were to shuffle off the mortal call tomorrow, oh, my English, woo, yeah, I speak good English, guys. That if I were to
Shuffle off the mortal coil.
yeah, tomorrow or any other day, you're a great inspiration to me. I love joking and saying with Moja, our director, every time when we drive, I say, I can't wait one day to commission Angus' work because I'll be commissioning my role model's work. And if I do that in life, I would have achieved what I wanted to do in the film industry. You must know you are a great inspiration to many a black child. I'm not going to talk about, I don't want to separate, but I need you to understand that you might be white, but you advocate everything that is black and black progression. And we will never turn a blind eye to that. We thank you and we thank God or whoever you believe in for your presence, because had it not been you, probably this TV channel wouldn't have even, though it's named after my father, but I don't think, you know, with you at the back of my head that I want to commission something from you, and I think it's closer. Let's get it closer again. We might get portrait of a young man drumming. He did say that. So yeah, I love you. Genuinely I do. And I hope the world can produce many of you so that we can have a lot of role models and people get inspiration.
Thank you.
On that note, guys, before I cry and you all see that I'm sheepish and everything else, it's been a great pleasure here at KCI&MO's Corner. We had Angus, guys. It's been insightful and we can't wait for that production. Shaka. Everybody is waiting for that. For me, still some about Kamchaka Mampela. I Mochaba so we're coping everything it out. Ta-da.
I wanna take you back to the days of Yvonne Chaka Chaka, to my like another future, which is Desiree and my brother. Gone are the days when artists had that raw talent. Now the industry has gotten feminine like Honda Ballet. We dedicate this one to musicians that left legacy, those with us and those who had to face death tragically. We miss you, we hope to meet you in next life. Show me your L's for Ali Alebo when left.
Let me take you back to the beginning when songbirds were singing and bringing down the house with tunes that stayed ringing.
SAMAL TV SA. When there's nothing else, reimagine.